But first, how to train a radical. That's the focus of tonight's angle. Now, as the angle predicted a few weeks ago, heavy hitters on Wall Street are panicking, not about the economy, about the rise of Zohran Mamdani. The current favorite to become New York's next mayor will, they believe, lay waste to the city's capitalist spirit by pushing government price controls and heavy-handed regulations at all levels. A new independent expenditure group named New Yorkers for a Better Future Mayor 25 is launching a campaign against Mamdani with a plan to raise around $20 million. Well, they see him in his rise as a tsunami warning, with capitalism, of course, on the line. And they're right to be worried. Jamie Dimon, CEO of J.P. Morgan, says that the Democrats have gone off the rails with DEI and other radical policies, and that Mamdani is more Marxist than a socialist, and said the campaign's talking points were the same ideological mush that means nothing in the real world. But the ideological mush is at work across the country, and it's meaning something. In colleges and universities, at anti-ICE and pro-Hamas protests, and in violent attacks now on law enforcement. And the goal, by the way, it's not winning an election here, an election there. The goal is the total dismantlement of the United States government, our institutions, and of course, our trust in officials at every level. Now, the behavior here, it's very important everyone understand this tonight, is learned. Their warped thinking has been taught. And those teaching it are organizing at events such as Socialism 2025, the big conference that took place over the 4th of July weekend in Chicago. Now, the propagandists are working 24/7, and they include professors attending this conference, such as Lorgia Garcia Pena from Princeton.
Capitalism sucks. It thrives on individualism, and individualism is killing us.
Says the most narcissistic and self-absorbed people on the planet. Individualism is the problem. Now, such as a lecturer at UPenn named Geo Maher, who is still waiting, apparently, for the post-war Civil War reconstruction.
We live in a moment that is characterized fundamentally by the defeat of that reconstruction project. And until this reconstruction is completed, until the neo-Confederates that we see sticking their heads out of their snake holes all over the country are decapitated, we will not have a truly different and a truly democratic country.
Nice T-shirt. Decapitation, is that what he said? Well, next time he should travel with a guillotine and really drive that point home. Now, the goal for these malcontents is simple: to convince a critical mass of Americans, especially young people, that our country isn't worth fighting for. It's certainly not worth celebrating or saving. And if you wonder why Chicago public schools remain among the worst in the nation, look no further than Stacey Davis Gates, a teachers union president.
Like, yo, people going to the beach tomorrow, they celebrating and fireworks, ain't no damn America. The reimagination of this place that we are trying to save, but kind of not because we ain't out here saving it. Like, we doing stuff, like shout out to CTU. You build a militancy and a coalition where if it has to go down, it goes down. You call the strike.
Notice the lingo here, focused on teacher strikes and so forth, but building a militancy. Forget making sure kids learn about something that might be useful to become independent adults. Let's focus on getting teachers on the picket line so they can strike, and actually not teach anything. Might be better. Now, the socialism agenda is really anti-American activism, which includes constant recruitment of new activists, from young children to college students to colleagues.
I'm an engineering professor. I don't know how to wrestle with doing community building in a way that doesn't get exploited by the university.
Get the university's money to do the work you want to do to dismantle the university within. I think that is what I would advise, what I try to do, and hopefully I won't end up in court for saying this on a mic.
End up in court? She's going to get a raise from Princeton. Dismantle the university from within. Yeah, they knew what they were getting when they hired her, right? That's why they hired her. That's a large part of her appeal. Her deep-seated hatred of the system made her cool and edgy. She fit right into the club of campus radicals who are rarely held accountable. And when you're not judged on the merit of your performance or the soundness of your thinking, your scholarship, you traffic in meaningless cliches and generalities.
We don't live in a democracy. We should start saying that more so. I mean, there's so many different ways. I'm not going to go into it, but people are clapping, so there's general agreement. I'm glad we agree on that. So do we capture the state, or do we try to replace it with something different? And I think it's the latter, to replace it with something different.
And this is what today's Democrats believe, right? Mamdani, AOC, Jayapal, Omar, that America's traditional institutions, those that help make us prosperous, strong, safe, are oppressive.
If we want to be serious about abolishing the police, we have to be serious about abolishing the capitalist state and replacing it with a new system of socialism, communism, however we want to call it.
However you want to call it. Of course, anyone who knows actual history, I'm not sure Mr. Kafia does, knows that communism and socialism collectively have delivered nothing but death, misery, and suffering to people worldwide, while capitalism has delivered opportunity. Not perfect, but a lot of opportunity. Now, there were so many dumb ideas floated at this conference, it's hard to keep track, but this one was epic from a University of Houston professor.
And I can tell you with great confidence that in the Third Ward of Houston, that means we will be renamed the George Floyd University. For those of you who don't know, George Floyd grew up in Houston's Third Ward. You're now talking about what I would describe as the de-statification of a public institution.
Ooh, big word, de-statification. They all go to the same wardrobe department, you see? They're all wearing the same. But tearing down anything as they're doing, the standards of excellence, merit, replacing it with a monument to a culture of resentment and anti-Americanism and thuggishness. And you got to start young, because teaching the kids that borders mean nothing, that no immigrant is illegal, that's really crucial to all this. And that means you have to teach them that ICE is evil. This was the president of the National Education Association last month.
Enough! Enough of the ICE raids! Enough! Of the cruelty and the hate! Enough! Of the division and disrespect! Enough!
He's trying to conjure the word. And if you wondered why so many young people throw the word fascism around so lightly, look at this language in an NEA pamphlet obtained by Corey DeAngelis. NEA pledges to defend against Trump's embrace of fascism by using the term fascism, spelled incorrectly, in NEA materials, is to correctly characterize Donald Trump's program and actions. Now, as usual, in describing what this socialist Marxist network really represents, J.D. Vance hits the nail on the head.
The radicals of the far left, they don't need a unifying ideology of what they're for, because they know very well what they're against. What unites Islamists, gender studies majors, socially liberal white urbanites, and big pharma lobbyists, it isn't the ideas of Thomas Jefferson or even of Karl Marx. It's hatred. They hate the people in this room. They hate the President of the United States, and most of all, they hate the people who voted for that President of the United States.
Democrats who lend credence to these attacks against Trump as a fascist, his supporters as fascists, attacks against our system as oppressive, attacks against the police as Gestapo, attacks against ICE as terroristic, they are fueling more anti-American hatred, which, as we've seen since the Floyd riots, has resulted in nothing but violence and destruction, not a single job created by their activism. Now, is that really what the Democrat voters of America want their party to be doing? And that's The Angle.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.